Well, welcome, guitar players, to the very first episode of the Metal Guitar Academy podcast. So, I actually struggled for quite a bit to decide to do this podcast because I was kind of thinking, hey, what do I have to talk about that's interesting? And that may seem like a strange attitude, especially from a guy who does guitar so much. This is a guitar podcast, so why would talking about guitar not be interesting? Well, here's why. I played these games with myself. I know people are interested in the books that I write, in the instructional books and in the courses. I know for a fact people are interested in my music. I know that people are interested in my guitar playing and insights for instruction. So I decided, you know what, I must be playing some sort of psychological game with myself to just automatically assume that people would not be interested in what I have to say. Pardon me. About music, about guitar playing, some insights into these arenas, popular culture for that matter, as it pertains to music, as it pertains to guitar playing, philosophies regarding these things. So I thought it may be appropriate today to just talk a little bit about kind of the origin story, the origin story of Metal Guitar Academy, and my own musical background, my own guitar playing background, just so that you guys can get to know a little bit about the guy who's talking to you and about who's likely teaching you a little bit, if you have some of the Metal Guitar Academy stuff. So, what is Metal Guitar Academy? Metal Guitar Academy was developed out of an idea that I had at first around maybe 2013, I'd say, so about 7 years ago, as of this recording, called Guitar Foundry. Now, this was not an official company. I had a logo, I had all that good stuff, but was not trademarked and nothing official like that, like Metal Guitar Academy is. And the first book that I wrote for Guitar Foundry at that time was the Sweet Picking book. Sweet Picking Steam Powered. Had a whole different cover. All that stuff was different. It was available on Amazon through the Kindle stuff and the physical Create Space. But before that even, really the first book I would describe as not really a book, but something very useful that I still use today with students all over the world, and that is a series of tablature books that was called and is called Blank Guitar Tab Domination. Because it's fun to say domination after everything. But really, this small thing, what seems to be a small item, a guitar manuscript book, probably back in 2011, so this is close to 10 years ago, really was the start of something pretty big. And I used the book with my private students. I don't remember the name. It was a blank guitar manuscript book. It was kind of greenish and white on the cover. And I thought it was a pretty good tab book. Okay, it had pretty big chord boxes, blank stuff, had decent sized tablature to write in, and it had the requisite music staff, which frankly I don't use a lot in the lessons, but I used that for a good many years with my private students. And then all of a sudden it was not published anymore, and I had nothing to recommend. I had nothing to recommend that my students pick up before they start taking lessons with me. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna do this myself. And this was a little bit after or during a time when a business that I was involved in was actually kind of falling apart, a instructional business called Musician Sage. And I can get into that in maybe a different episode, because there's a lot there to talk about, a lot of good lessons learned. But I was, coming up with a bunch of stuff anyway, in Photoshop and in GIMP for that project. And I said, you know what, I'm just gonna put together my own guitar manuscript book because I literally looked and I could not find anything at all that was good out there that I could recommend my students pick up. Believe it or not, something as simple as a guitar manuscript book. Could not find anything. Either the chord boxes were too small, the tab was too small, there was too much space in the book. So I just put something together pretty quickly, and I use it to this day. I think it's a great tab book. I still need to move that over to the Metal Guitar Academy moniker, because believe it or not, I have not done that. That brings me to an interesting, if anybody out there does any publishing on Amazon, what I've noticed is that you simply, and this is just a little business tip, you just can't rely on the search stuff in that. When I was first putting these books out, it was coming up pretty high in the rankings. If you put in a keyword, the tab book would come up, the early Guitar Foundry stuff would come up. And then Amazon seemed to start doing these big just dumps of material. And the search results, the titles would just go way, way down. And that was one thing that led me to start doing, or to come up with the Metal Guitar Academy idea, where there was just more going on, and to start doing most of the sales through my own site, metalguitaracademy.com, not rely as heavily on Amazon, because it really does feel a lot of times like you're pretty much like you're pissing in the ocean, because there's so many titles out there, some good and most not very good, unfortunately. But anyway, the Blank Guitar stuff, Blank Guitar tab, was really the first book, even though I wouldn't qualify it as a book. It's just the same page over and over again. But still a very useful tool, and I use that to this day with my Zoom lessons with people all across the world. I do a lot of writing in real time during those private lessons with people, those coaching sessions, so that still gets a lot of use. But Guitar Foundry was the name, was the pseudo company name for the first few books. There's a very short book that was just under my name, Brett Miller, not under Guitar Foundry, not under Metal Guitar Academy, called Going to College for Guitar. And this was almost just a little, what I would describe more as a monograph. If we're talking, kind of Sherlock Holmesian language here. Very short little monograph. And I don't know why I wrote it. I didn't write it with the intention of, any kind of marketing ploy or any kind of, selling it. I think I must have just sat down one day and wrote this thing. Again, probably 10 years ago. And interesting. It's a little guidebook for people who are wanting to, or think they want to, pursue higher education with the guitar, with music. And in it, I talk about things that really you should be prepared for, that a lot of people are not. I certainly was not as prepared as I could have been. I unfortunately didn't have anybody really telling me these things or preparing me as well as I could have been prepared. And hey, I was not preparing myself, so it's on me too. But it's a interesting little book, little monograph, and I think it still has some useful advice. This was just my experiences, again, auditioning for Berklee, and some of the deficits that I had, that I wasn't as prepared as I could have been, and recommending that people bone up on these things. So those were the first attempts at really a line of books or courses. And Metal Guitar Academy really came into its own, I would say, around 2017, 2016 perhaps. I would have to look up officially, but I just wanted to do something fun. I wanted to take what I'd already done, put it in a more of a polished package, more branding with the look, with the 80s look, the whole Tron kind of thing. I love the 80s. So that's just fun. Those are ways that I just keep myself entertained. And since then, it's been great. And I do feel like I have a great audience and a whole heck of a lot of students around the world. and continue to help a lot of people with this. And that's the number one reason that I do this is really to help people play better. And of course, to inject my opinions into things, because I am very opinionated when it comes to music, when it comes to guitar playing. And some things you can be dogmatic about in that arena, some things you can't. But the things that you have to be dogmatic about are foundational things, and an overall philosophy towards things like speed playing, things like practice strategies, things like mindset. All these things are very important. And in our YouTube culture here with guitar instruction, people are just really getting short shrift with a lot of those important, very important subjects. And this will probably be a leitmotif throughout these episodes as I perhaps vent my rage at YouTube. Some good things about it, a lot of bad things about it, culturally, not just musically. But I digress. So perhaps going a bit back in history, I started playing guitar, as many of you probably did, as a kid. I was 10 years old. Didn't know much about music. I listened to the same things pretty much that my parents listened to at the time. First cassette tape I ever got was Donny Osmond. I think it was called Soldier of Love. This is back, probably would have been like, mid to late 80s, something like that. Soon got into Tom Petty, Full Moon Fever. That's a solid record. Skid Row soon followed, the first Skid Row record. And then really discovered at that point AC/DC. That's where I fell in love with the rock and roll lifestyle and wanted to be a professional guitar player ever since about 10 years old or so. And first real big song I heard from them was Money Talks. It was on the radio. And then I dug a little bit. My brother got Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap on cassette, and again, Highway to Hell soon followed, and had all the cassettes, and really just wanted to be Angus Young. He was my first guitar hero. Remember distinctly sitting on the school bus one morning with a Walkman, listening to Back in Black, and just saying to myself, if I could just one day play like Angus Young, I would be happy. I thought to myself, and this is really thinking this genuinely, I wouldn't need to get any better. That's just that would just be the best the best thing in the world. I'd just be happy forever with that level of ability. And it's funny how things change. I still love Angus Young. I'm sure many of you do. He's a fantastic guitar player, but then then you hear Steve Vai, and then you hear Dream Theater, and then you hear Exodus, and then you hear all the heavier stuff, the death metal, and it is sometimes good, I think, as guitar players, as we are wont to be very critical often of our own ability levels of our playing, which can be good. That's how we get better, right? But it's important to have some perspective, I think, and I do like reflecting back on that story, even though it's just a very maybe boring kind of personal one, because it does give me some perspectives to sometimes say, hey, listen, as much as I can be critical of myself and my own playing and my own ability level and my own success in music career for what it's worth, it's important to reflect sometimes on why we do this stuff really, and I don't ever want to forget that story, because that does help me put things in perspective. I feel like I could do a lot of things beyond the AC/DC kind of thing, yet I still love Angus Young's playing. So I don't want to forget that little story. But as we go on with these episodes, we will have a little bit more structure, I think, a little bit more, not just monologue type of things. However, I do feel that it's pretty cool as I experiment with putting this out, for you guys to hear a bit about my background, and also for me to revisit some of these things. A little bit therapeutic. It's nice to think back. Sometimes we forget things, right? Unless we really have an opportunity to focus on it. And this is giving me that opportunity, so I do appreciate you guys listening. Now, one of the first performance experiences that I remember was eighth grade. I had actually played in what you could call a band with my brother and one of his friends, and I want to say I was maybe in sixth grade. They would have been like in middle school, eighth grade, something like that. And the band was called Overruled, and there's some kid on vocals. And I gotta say, like, if I could find the cassette tape, I'd really like to listen to it. I don't think we did too badly. We had one original called, you guessed it, Overruled, and we played some covers. Not very well, but not too badly for a sixth grader, you know. But we never played any shows. That was mostly just playing in the basement. Eighth grade, I moved a lot when I was a kid, so I was constantly the new kid. So, you know, perhaps that has something to do with, you know, wanting to get into rock and roll, get into metal, get into playing. Who knows? But I was constantly the new kid, and in eighth grade, the guitar really kind of helped me with that, because, you know, you play a show in eighth grade. We did a talent show, myself and a couple other kids. We played Mother by Danzig. We played Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap by AC/DC. And I think that was it. I think we played just those two songs. And, you know, when you do that in a lower grade, like that eighth grade or whatever, even if you're not very popular, you're really like the coolest kid in the school for like a day or two after something like that. And that was kind of a much needed, I think, self-esteem boost at the time. It's tough always being the new kid, you know, as many of you probably know. So guitar gave me somewhat of a built-in community of kids to at least talk to. Okay, when I was the new kid after around fourth grade or so, that's when I started playing. So that was always a way to meet some good people and sort of help smooth things over a bit. But did some shows. I remember in ninth grade or 10th grade, had a band again. My brother was on the drums. Had a guy named Kyle on vocals. My friend Dan, still my friend to this day, on bass. We opened up for a magic show, and this was in the school. And we didn't know, but the whole audience was filled with like 5-year-old kids and their moms. And so we were playing Testament. We played some Ozzy. We were going to play Funk 49, but we got cut off. The curtain got pulled on us before the song started. And there's a videotape of that somewhere. And there's all these little kids crying in the audience. So that was interesting. But so getting a little too nostalgic here. Probably not that exciting for anybody but myself. But if we compress the time, high school was a time of just intensive trying to get better at the guitar. I was not naturally gifted at the guitar by any stretch of the imagination. I had a very poor right-hand technique, had an okay left-hand technique. Any speed that I developed was legato, hammer-ons and pull-offs, certainly. I just didn't pick right, and that was a struggle for a long time. You know, all of you guys who maybe were teenagers back in the 90s, you know, internet existed, but nothing like today. There was no video, there was no YouTube, nothing like that. So back then, you really didn't have the opportunity to see people playing anywhere near like you could today. And that was somewhat of a handicap compared to what people have today, because I think I had one video. I mean, they were expensive, you know, like $50 back then. And, you know, you're 15 years old, you don't really have that kind of money to spend on things like that. So I had a John Petrucci Rock Discipline video, and I was frustrated with that because they never showed his right hand enough, and that's really what I wanted to see, because I knew I had a deficiency there. So a lot of the right hand things that I talk about really have just been hard-won knowledge, and I do feel I'm pretty qualified to help people with that aspect, because if you've ever noticed, people who tend to be naturally gifted at things are not the best at teaching them to other people. you take someone like an Yngwie, who I love. I'm not knocking Yngwie, of course, but if you've ever watched any of his, loosely termed instructional stuff, the guy was, I think, just able probably to do a lot of that stuff when he was like 16 years old. I mean, and I'm not saying he didn't work, he didn't practice, but let's face it, some people are just naturally good at certain things. And so people like that really aren't very helpful when it comes to trying to learn from them, because they didn't go through these struggles like mortals like you and I have to do. And going to Berklee College of Music, a guy who did really help me out a lot with my picking was Joe Stump. He was a guy that I really wanted to learn from. I had a CD of his from, I think, Leviathan Records, a pretty good shred record, just really fast neoclassical stuff. And that's what I wanted to learn how to do at the time. So I lucked out in the fact that I got him as my private instructor at Berklee the first semester, which was pure luck. I mean, he was a pretty in-demand instructor, and usually you had to wait to get your first choice, until like your second or third year at the school. And I got him as my instructor right out of the gate, which was pretty cool. Took lessons with him probably for 2 semesters. For me, it was just not even so much what he was showing me or explaining in great detail. There wasn't tons of great detailed explanations, let me put it that way. But being able just to sit in front of a guy like that and just watch him, that for me was, I think, the most important, helping me absorb how to get some better technique, especially right-hand technique, because I'd never seen anybody up close and personal do those things, especially with the right hand, the picking, the sweep picking. So just being in that sort of a presence was very helpful to me. And again, I think there is a big technique advantage now for younger people with YouTube, because, well, of course, nothing can replace sitting in front of a guy. You can see people pretty closely and what they're doing on YouTube, which is something that, again, back then was tougher. Now, so that's an advantage of YouTube. There's way more disadvantages, and we have to keep that in mind. Again, that could be topic for another discussion. But so did the Berklee thing, and played in bands, blah blah blah. So here we are today. And college years in terms of guitar development, again, I can revisit that in a different episode. One of the best things was just some of the people that I met. Berklee was a little strange. It wasn't your standard school. A lot of people would come and go. I did not have a standard kind of a graduation experience, and that was partly my fault, mostly my fault, but also just a fact of how it was there. I had friends that had left earlier or stayed longer, and it's just a good experience being in that environment of people that are that passionate about what you're passionate about. There wasn't any of this social justice nonsense going on there. I've read some articles today. It's starting a little bit, but I bet you it's still a lot less than most college campuses, because I think most of the kids there just they want to play, man. They want to play their instrument. They're not there to get indoctrinated or be activists or anything like this. They're there with a single purpose, and that is to get good at what they love. And that was certainly my mindset. And so that was a very positive environment to be in. So that's it. We're gonna call it quits here for today. Again, this is a bit of an experiment today. I'm going to be using this to just get used to how to post all this stuff and get it up there and whatnot. But we'll be talking about guitar playing quite a bit here. We'll be talking about metal. We'll be talking about music, and we'll be talking about things like philosophy of practice, quality, the quality of what you do, the quality of the music out there these days, the quality of the metal out there these days. Is it as good as what has come before. Are there things about it that we do need to be more critical about? Okay, and I believe that there are. So we can certainly get into some of those subjects. And listen, we may get into some instruction, some raw instruction, you never know. Although, that's better dealt with at the metalguitaracademy.com site. So listen, folks, thank you, and I will see you very soon.